Over 15 years after the county had established a northern Amherst African American high school, Madison Heights Colony Road School was built and opened in 1939, with its first class graduating from 11th grade in 1943.
I thought it was a nice looking school. It was comparable to the schools that I had gone to in Lynchburg. It was brick, two-story, having a first story and a basement area.
And the front was one story and the back was 2 stories. And when you walked in, I remember the principal's office was to the right, and to the left was the library, very small library. We had one long table and bookshelves on 2 sides. And then you were in our auditorium. And what made that so special was every morning when we got to school, everybody came together in the auditorium and we would sing a song and have prayer and pledge to allegiance, and then we would go to our classrooms.
We used to have chapel every morning before class started. The singing of the songs were my most embarrassing moment because they would sing the song Juanita. Juanita, lingering falls the southern moon. I hated it.
While some small southern Amherst elementaries stayed open, others were replaced by the new school.
They talked about closing those small schools, but after they talked about closing, then again they came back and fixed some of those schools up. But eventually, during those first 3 years of the elementary school, of my elementary school, we eventually went to the Madison Heights.
Everybody, came from, around the neighborhood of the Madison Heights Colony Road, the Scott Zion area, the Single Mingo area, and some came from Monroe, Virginia as well.
Well, we were excited about going to Madison Heights. We had the summer to think about it, and so we were all excited and ready to go. And then, of course, at that age, riding the bus was a big deal. So I think we weren't so reluctant to leave, knowing that we would get to ride the bus and go to this larger school. And our parents, they were happy. They were glad that they didn't have to worry about the no water and no bathroom situation, because we were going to a school with all of those new things.
Most difficult thing for me for going to the Madison High School was walking. 2 miles to walk to school and 2 miles to walk back home. I was really small at attending school, and my brothers and sisters was much larger than I was, and they would walk fast to get home. We'd be hungry. They would be walking and running, and I had to struggle to keep up with them. Walking to school was a chore for me.
Students from all over the county, they came there. And then Mr. Johnson Wesley, you may have heard of him. He picked us up for school. Yeah, he bought a bus, red big old bus. We rode the bus up there.
Did Mr. Wesley own that bus?
He did.
So the county didn't provide buses to go to the schools?
No.
When did you start driving the school bus?
That was my last year in school I drove.
Before the students started driving, they had a driver named Johnson Wesley, Mr. Johnson Wesley. Then as the kids got older in high school, the seniors in high school, they would drive the bus.
And I had to drive in the ice, snow, and sleet. Go down to Stapleton and pick up kids, pick up kids, drop some off at the elementary school, and then take the rest to Madison Heights.
But I drove the bus when I wasn't supposed to be driving, but I would drive it when some of the other the older school guys were driving down where the bus used to go. It was down to Stapleton, and a lot of those guys that was driving the bus, they wasn't used to those curves down there. But I was born there, and I was younger, but I could drive. Used to drive the bus, and Mr. Wesley didn't even know that I was driving the bus.
I don't know, you had people on there that, well, just like it is today, you had kids on there that disrespected you, and it just was a headache.
In the early beginnings, the bus did not come on Amelon Road. There were only 2 black families on this road, and so we had to walk over to Dixie Airport Road and catch the bus. And if the bus broke down or something happened during that time, you had to walk from Madison Heights School back here to my home, and we did that a couple of times, and that's when my parents came very concerned about us, walking. And because I had polio when I was 14 months old, my parents saw that as a hardship for me. I didn't, they did. And because it was so much fun, because you had a whole busload of kids walking the highway, which wasn't that good at that time. But the thing about it, you played, you had fun, and you talked, and then people just dropped off. And by the time we got to Dixie Airport Road, there were like 5 or 6 of us who walked from Dixie Airport over here to Amelon Road. So eventually my parents went out to the superintendent and the school board and requested that a bus come into this area, and finally it did.
The elementary experience.
Well, a typical day was, after we would have our morning devotions, then we would go to class. And my first grade teacher was Mrs. Henderson. And it was the first and the second grade in one classroom. And we were in the building that was 2 stories high. And we would go in and we would start our morning work. We would start out with reading, and you had different reading groups. And then we would do some math, and by that time it was lunchtime, and then recess. And then after recess we would start doing other subjects like math and history and things of that nature.
What kinds of things were you reading?
Well, it was your class book, and she would give each person a section, if no more than 2 sentences, to read during the whole thing. And every once in a while you got lucky, and they would read a story, and everybody got to read a paragraph to see if your reading was improving or not.
I remember writing books. We had writing books back then.
What they call penmanship?
Mm-hmm. I was going to say you practice your penmanship in those books.
What about work at the board? Did you?
We had plenty of work at the board to do. You would go to the board and you'd be able to add, subtract, multiply, and divide. You'd work your problems out on the board and tell the teacher how you got it, and you would do your work really on the blackboard.
I remember social studies and history. I remember more in the 4th and 5th grade, because that's when you got your Virginia history book. It was kind of thick, and it was all about, founding of Virginia and the forefathers and the presidents and everything, that went on in Virginia during that time. It was odd, though, very little, if anything, was given over to the plight of blacks and minorities in Virginia history at that time. It was always left out of the history book. And slavery, I said, was mentioned, not delved into. But it was exciting, to learn about the state, but at the same time you were looking and saying, where was our history as well.
What did you study in Black history?
Well, we always had the pictures. I can remember the big pictures on the wall, of the special people that had, done special things, Mary Methune and George Washington Carver, Booker T. It was like 3 big pictures that was up there.
When I went to school, we didn't have, in the county, extracurricular type, that's what I call extracurricular type activities. We were there for the basics, reading, writing, and arithmetic. So there was heavy emphasis on learning. There were no division of within the classes, regardless of what your ability to learn was. Everybody was in the same class. So there was a certain degree of intensity for all to learn.
My first grade teacher was Mrs. Vaughn, and our principal was Mr. Moultrie. And he always liked for you to give him a hug and say good morning. And she was kind of strict. I mean, back then, you got your hand slapped with the belt if you misbehaved. I don't really remember a cafeteria. We may have had one. But I know sometimes we ate in our rooms. I remember chocolate milk in the room, and our first savings accounts every Monday. I think you brought your money to school, and you had a little savings book. And those are some of the things I remember.
Well, I remember carrying my lunch to school every day, and I loved bologna. I still do. And I used to put my sandwich on the radiator. And then by lunchtime, it was all crisp and warm, and it tasted real good back then. And I remember the milk truck coming every day because you had to put your order in and pay for your milk. And your milk would come in glass bottles. And then when your lunchtime rolled around, students were selected to go out into the auditorium and pick up your milk crate.
I love the bathrooms, of course, and the cafeteria. That was something new and great. The food was always good. The third and fourth grade, I believe, in Mrs. Ewell's class, they were combined because she allowed me to work with the fourth grade. And then I remember her taking me up to the principal, Mr. Moultrie, and she asked him if I could go on to the fifth, I think. And I remember him saying, no, we don't allow skipping. Yeah, that's what she wanted to skip me. And like I said, I don't know, we just, had a little bond there. I'm not going to say I became a teacher's pet, but we really had a bond, and I remember her choosing me, I guess we should say, to do an oratorical contest. Oh, I remember that, going over and over and over the piece, and it was Old Glory, Say Who, by the Ships and the Crew, James Whitmore. And I wanted so badly to win, and I just remember Mrs. Ewell just went over and over it with me. And so sure enough, on that night that we had the competition, James Reynolds was 7th grade, and he won, but I came in second, and I was so excited. It was like I had won the whole thing. But anyway, that was one of the most exciting things for me.
I had good teachers who were concerned about my learning and about all the students learning. I think there was a camaraderie among the students because of the environment that we were in. You were very close. It wasn't like you separated and some went here and some went there. You were in the environment with everyone. The only thing that was basically different is that we did not have a playground, as I was used to coming from Lynchburg. We had a graveled back area behind the school. So when it came time to play, you invented your own games.
The high school experience.
So how did you feel leaving St. Domingo going to Madison Heights?
I feel like I was going to New York City.
You want
kids from all over the county, buses. It was quite an experience. It was a big school at that particular time. I just feel great.
Now, when you think about Scott Zion School and Madison Heights School, what was the difference when you got to it?
We had, when we had class, we had different classes at different times. We had bathrooms. We had what was called school patrolmen. I was a patrolman wearing these white belts. Yeah, and the badges.
What'd you have to do for safety patrol?
That was walk through the halls and try to keep the other kids, watch them get on the bus, make sure they got on the bus and the right bus.
How did they know you were on the safety patrol?
You had a little belt you wore.
Did you feel good when you became a part of the safety patrol?
Oh yeah, I was. But that's all. And everybody used to tease. They teased me a lot in school.
We used to go over and get our lunch from, we could go to a store, I think my name, Mr. Williams used to run the store. We used to go over there for lunch. We had someone to go over there and get sodas or cakes, buns, or whatever for lunch. But we had to sit in our classroom and eat. We didn't have a cafeteria.
That we could go in and buy snacks, and snacks were cheap then. You could get snacks and things for 5 cents.
Also, we didn't have to worry about going to the spring and get water. They had running water. And the school had a cold furniture in it, and it was always nice and warm.
You know, you would be in a class maybe, I think, for 45 minutes to an hour or something. Then the bell would ring and you'd go someplace else. And it would go on like that until lunchtime, and then you'd come back and, you know, start all over again. We had a store in the back of the school, and you could go over there and buy snacks and stuff while you was at recess, and that was good.
Do you remember your favorite subject?
History.
Do you remember your history teacher?
Mr. Langhorne. When he saw something in you, he just stayed right. He worked closely with you, and if you didn't come up to what he thought you were, he would really get excited, try to get you excited, and he also taught us algebra too. And I had great respect for Mr. Langhorne. He was one of my mentors.
I can remember W.D. Langhorne, Ms. Jackson. I think she taught me geometry. We had geometry, yeah. And Miss Mitchell.
Miss Mitchell was about the only one I could get along with, I think. Her main object was to get you through school and wanted you to keep on through school in college.
Miss Deal, Miss Judd, Miss Deal. She was a French teacher. I like that because I remember what I won't forget about French. I remember Miss Deal, it was one day when we come into class, she said, everything you say had to be in French. You know, I wasn't able to do that, so I learned how to say, Je ne répondez-vous.
Literature was one of, I like that. But the only subject I really didn't like was arithmetic or mathematics. I never could get it. I mean, I did my tables, my adding, but all this other stuff, it was just hard.
For some reason, Miss Davis, I think I like Miss Davis, okay, but I don't think Miss Davis, I was her favorite student, put it that way, because she taught us literature, and you always had to recite a poem or something about, you know, Macbeth. I never forget, but one was Annabelle Lee. And I think I got an A on that one. That's the only time I've got an A in her room. I love that one. My darling, my life and my bride. All the night tired, I lie down by the side of my darling, my life. And I love that one.
I was asked to apply for a position that was becoming vacant by Maurice L. Moore because he was going in service, I believe, at the time. And it was in science. And I was certified, a bachelor's in biology and minor in chemistry. So I applied for it, and it was mid-semester, you know, and I started after that.
So you ended up, your first full-time teaching career was at Madison Heights Colony Road.
It was an experience that I had never encountered, so I knew biology, but I didn't know how to teach. So it was a learning experience, and I made mistakes, and I said, to this day, I learned how to teach because of the children. They taught me how to teach. And I began to love teaching because of them. I made use of what I had, and I would bring in different art samples and go to the store and get what I needed to do an experiment. But getting the kids directly involved was hard to do because you just didn't have space to do it in.
In the last year of school in Madison Heights, we used to have what we call Seniors Day. And that was the day that you would have to teach a class. You know, each senior would have to teach a class. So, you know, most of the kids in the class, they would jump at the class, you know, I'm gonna teach, you know, this. So I wouldn't say nothing, you know, because I was one, I didn't volunteer for nothing really, that was me. So it come down to it, algebra and math, geometry. That was the class that nobody wanted. That was my favorite class. So that's what the class that I got. And I remember Mr. Moultrie, he was the principal, but he was teaching algebra, I think it was 8th grade algebra. Moultrie told him to have a review on that day. And this was the end of the school year. Anything that they had during the whole year, they had any question on it to ask me. And some of them say, well, I suppose he can't answer. And he told me, well, if he can't answer, said, don't you come to me. I didn't have no problem with, you know, getting it to them.
Well, I remember the prom.
Who did you take to the prom?
The wife.
My brother Joe. They all lived in New Jersey. He bought everything I needed to go to the prom. And it was nice.
Do you remember the color of your gown?
Pink. First prom, last prom. But it was nice.
Where was the prom?
At the school. That's where we went to the school.
Did they decorate it? Was there a theme?
They decorated it. It was nice.
Who was your date?
Sam. He could drive, so he had a car. And I thought I was, you know, some people that the parents had to bring them or whatever. But we had a car.
I think I was the only student there that had a car, and I couldn't park it on the school ground, so I had to park it on the street.
What kind of car was it?
It was a 1947. I think I had a 47 Kaiser. Then they don't make them anymore.
Oh, and Miss Mitchell used to. That's how I learned to waltz. You know, she would give us dance lesson, and I learned to waltz. She taught us that.
During school hours or after school?
It was like we had a period to do stuff.
Like an activity period or something.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
And she taught us to dance. Had the guys dancing with the girls, waltzing.
Because I never been a dancer. I learned the waltz, and I think that was all that I learned.
He was driving the bus, and he would start. He lived in here in Gosmere. He had to go all the way back down to Stapleton and pick up some people. And it was one girl down there named Mildred Mason. I never forget. She liked him, so he'd put his books in the seat for me by the time he got to my stop. And she'd be mad about that. But anyway, when he got to my stop, you know, moved the books so I could sit down. So we had a rival going there.
Well, my Doc was telling you we were tight then. And I looked out for her as best I could.
Your graduation from high school, what do you remember about that?
I remember, I think the only thing I can remember was they would call you up on stage and you know, call your name and give you a certificate of graduation.
I know we bought rings. I don't even remember getting a gown, but I guess we did. I remember my brother Joe, he bought my ring.
I ordered that ring a little bit before I graduated. You ordered it through the school, and they would give them to you when they come in. I'm thinking they gave it to us at graduation.
Do you remember how much it cost?
Probably about $30 or so. They were cheap.
I never thought about going further than high school because really I didn't have the funds, the money, and all I wanted to do is get out of school, get me a job, get me a car. That was it.
Now, did you get? Now, I know you graduated from school. You got the job. Did you get the car?
Yes.
And what was that first car?
1940-something Chevrolet. And tell you the truth, I went to Connecticut. Hardman's, I think it was Hardman's tobacco field. And we made good money up there during the summer. That's why I saved up the money to buy my first car. I was the first one in the household to have a car. But after I bought the car, my last year in school, my mother wouldn't let me drive to school but one day. And that was the last day of school.
In 1956, Central High School, a new consolidated all-black high school, opened. At that time, Colony Road became a school for elementary grades only. The school integrated, renamed James River Elementary, closed when the current Madison Heights Elementary School opened for the 1991-92 school year.